You all right there,
I'm all right.
sir?
Boy, the modern day slate.
The modern day slate? Well,
Yeah.
we never broke down and actually bought an actual slate, so
And they sell them on Amazon too for cheap.
they do sell them on Amazon. But these are quite cheap as well.
Yeah, right. Those are the ones that came with you.
Over the long term.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. What's going on? My name is B. Vo.
And I'm Robert Rostick.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Raising Unmanageables, episode 69.
Oh, wow.
Just knocking them out.
We're breaking the 70 mark next week. Right?
Next week's going to be 70.
Right.
I can't wait. We had to take a week off. I was unavailable last week.
And I was in South Carolina with the daughter.
South Carolina? How'd that trip go?
It went quite well.
Fantastic.
And we took the cheap way out.
What does that mean?
That means we got the smallest rental car there was
Right.
at the cheapest price
Okay.
for the lowest rate and got the cheapest gas that's possible in order to get there and back.
But y'all had a good time.
We had a great time.
All right.
Could have been better had we stayed at a nice hotel. But again, we took the cheap way out.
Well, that's the cost of going cheap.
And the thing about the hotel that was quite funny was that it was loud.
I bet. That's another cost of going cheap.
The less money that you have, the louder the hotel is.
The less money you have, the more you got to put up with.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 a.m, people talking, and it's like they're in your room.
That's right.
But they're 2 floors up.
Wallpaper thin. Paper thin walls is what they call it.
Cheap.
Before we get started or go any further, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, click the notification button, and let's just jump right into the conversation today, Robert.
What are we going to talk about?
Today, I want to just share some stories about how we can help or give some more some tips to people out there that have to take the cheap route of getting services done, like your service, my service.
But my service isn't cheap.
Your service isn't cheap, but what people do is they try to look for the cheapest route coming into it because they think that that's going to save them the most money. Or, well, in photography, I know people try to shortcut the time so that they can get out of paying as much money. But it's not really just about the time. It's about the processing, the equipment, everything else. So there's all these different levels of that you have to tend to when actually providing someone with a service that they don't actually know about up front. So that's what I want to talk about. So tell me some things that...
They do the same thing with logos, too. They say, okay, make me a logo. So you go to the refrigerator, you ask them, do you want it cold or you want it hot? If they want it hot, you go to the microwave. They want it cold, you go to the refrigerator. You pull out a logo, you bring it to them, and you say that'll be $9.95.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's not what I want.
Right.
And you go, well, okay, what is it you want? Do you want the one that costs $10.95? Then you go over to the microwave, not the refrigerator. Go pull one out of there. And they go, well, that's not what I want. And then you say, okay, what you really want is something designed.
Right.
Well, that's going to cost you $4,000.
Right.
Well, then that's when they go, I'll take the one out of the fridge.
I'll take the one from the fridge.
Right.
And make sure you swing by Google and search analogies because those analogies were pretty far out analogies. But I get the point with regard to a lot of people come to me sometimes and after they've spent the money. And I just recently was in a conversation last week with a woman and she's already spent the money for her logo, and she bought this package, and at face value, the package was pretty decent, right?
Yes.
They're gonna give you a 2-page website. They're gonna give you a logo.
Sure.
There's a couple other things I can't remember what the couple other things were that they actually provide to you, and then they do that work and they pass it off to you.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. The trouble with that is once you're not on their radar as somebody to be taken care of, that they should take care of. That cost is not structured for them to actually take care of you, and to actually show you what to do with the things that they've designed for you.
And how to maximize.
And how to maximize off of it, right? So when you get a logo done by a B, and C type service, and it's $100, $200, if you think you're spending too much money at $300, when you get a logo by these people, what you're getting is them spending the least amount of time as possible.
Sure.
So they can get it done quickly and move on to the next one, because that price is actually too cheap for them to make money off of. So they have to be able to get you in and get you out and move into the next thing.
Because the name of the game is to make money.
Is to make
now,
money.
We're gonna do it quickly,
Right. For cheap.
for very cheap, or we're gonna do it timely. It's gonna cost a little bit more.
A little bit more.
Right. But one of the things I think people get mad at, especially when they come to you, is that, oh, wait a minute, I have to spend my money twice. Now, they don't even trust you, and you haven't done anything to them.
That's right.
Not one thing to them, and they come into you like with this lack of trust, lack of the fact that with this idea that you're gonna rip them off,
Right.
Because your price is gonna be so much more different than that person who just spit out a logo,
Right.
And perfectly. That's perfectly legitimate, because some people, that's all they need. They need something for right now. They're not in business for long term, or they're not thinking long term. They're thinking right now.
Right.
And when they get that and realize that it doesn't meet their qualifications, that's when they hit up you
Right.
from a referral.
Right.
And the referral say, okay, if you're thinking long term, you need to get with this person. This person is going to guide you, not in just providing you with a logo, but provide you with the services that are going to sustain your business.
Right. Right. And that goes both ways with regard to your business as well. When people come and the story, all the stories are unique in their own way, but they're all the same story, really, right? Someone had a budget. They figured they couldn't spend any more than that budget. They spent that money on that budget, and they didn't get what they wanted. And the primary reason that you don't get what you want when you buy the cheap package of someone's service is that it's not designed for them to then turn around and show you how to use the logo that they designed for you, or which version of the logo goes for web, which version of the logo is for social media, which one is the best one for print.
And if that's an EPS or a PDF file
An AI
versus
file.
a JPEG,
Right.
a little
So,
drop in.
and I'm glad that's a dope segue because when you're out there and you're getting these services, ask them. Most times they're going to hand you a JPEG.
Sure.
Right. Ask them. You need to know if you can get the EPS file or the AI file, the Adobe Illustrator file, or a PSD. Get as many different file formats as possible. That way, it gives you the most. It gives you the most. What's the word I'm looking for? Just more latitude. Right. You have the most flexibility with those under those circumstances.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. There are two things that I want people to know. You are always going to pay for education. When you get something done wrong, it's going to cost you to get it done right.
Right.
You're always going to pay for it for that. That's number one. And number two is that even though I may not be right about anything, I always have an opinion about something. So this opinion is that when you find out by asking the person what limited knowledge you know, they are going to give you that limited answer. And that's going to cost you in the long run.
Right.
So if you want to really get started with understanding about a logo or about your business or about growth, go to someone who is going to give you a little bit of time. Pay them a little consulting fee, and so that they'll give you a little bit of time to let you know what is actually needed.
Right.
So that when you're spending that money, you're not spending it 3, 4, 5 times to get one thing done.
And I've had people come across my desk in that very situation. They've had 4 logos designed, and they're not using either one of them because that person didn't know they should take the time and spend that time with you and talk about branding, your messaging. This person's designed a logo for you and don't know in the background, they haven't asked enough questions to even know in the background that you're actually changing your shop. And you're changing your branding offhand because you're only looking at your brand as at your logo. So you have your brand and your logo person designing your logo. Meanwhile, you're changing your whole business and they don't know about it. And all those things are important, right? And you don't find those things out without sitting down and taking that time. So that big price tag comes with someone saying, I am going to take time and walk through this with you so that you understand by the end of this process, you're going to have a product that not just I think is right for you, that you've told me that you want it, and I've listened and returned to you a product that is right for the job.
Correct.
Right.
I've had a situation where I got turned down for a job because a person didn't want to listen to the information I provided to them about growing their business. And they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to do an exercise type of business." I said, "Okay, fine." Said, "We need some shots done." I said, "Okay, fine." Said, "What?" And I asked the question, "Which direction are we wanting to go in? Are we wanting to target people off the streets? Do we want to target wealthy people? Do we want to target poor people? Is it about training children? What is it about?" And they said, "Well, we just want to do exercise." I said, "Well, okay, I can't begin to photograph something unless you have some sort of idea about your brand, about what you're about to venture into. Well, we just need a picture." Okay, then what does that picture look like? Well, you're the photographer. You should tell me. I can't tell you this.
Right.
I can make, we can look at suggestions together, and here's what it's going to cost in order to sit down and go through this. Nominal fee, but if you do this, and we do actually do the shot, then that fee will be rolled into the price of the shot. So you're saving money while getting something done at the same time, and that something done is being consulted.
Right.
But did you know that they rejected that?
Because that means they have to then now turn around and do some work.
Oh, man.
Right. And what people get confused, I think, a lot of the time is if they quantify you as an expert, they get expert wrong mixed up with, they think that an expert is someone who's just supposed to have the answer, right? Just walking around with the answer, right? But as an expert, I think you're supposed to be resourceful enough to know how to get the information from them so that information turns into answers for themselves.
Hence,
right?
I said I am not right about anything or everything, but I do have an opinion.
That's right.
So I'm going to give you my best educated guess based on what it is that you're giving me.
Right.
I'm not going to give you something that's going to be, something I gave to Charlie over here last week. I'm going to give you something that's a product designed especially for you, number one, and your audience that you're trying to reach, number two.
Those people who aren't quote unquote experts and they're doing these jobs for cheap and fast, what they aren't charging for is to bring you information, is to gather information and then to return that work back on top of that information, right? And so my answer to anybody is a reflection of the conversations we've had, all the meetings we had, all the time we spent with somebody. That's what an expert does, right? Like
absolutely.
An actual one, right? The one that's gonna write you that big ass invoice at the end of their consultation fee. They're writing that invoice not just based on the information in their head, but all the things they had to do to get to that solution for that information, right? And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for someone to help you find solutions.
I want to know something.
Please.
If I go to St. Pete College, I go 4 years, and I get a degree.
Sure.
And I've done all of the research, all of the work. And you come to me, and I even go out into the world and I have 10 years of experience.
Right.
10 years of experience.
Okay.
And I have been pretty successful in that 10 years.
Okay.
And then there's someone else who goes to Harvard, comes out of school, and says, I have no experience, absolutely none, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge you for the fact that I went to Harvard. Which one are you going to hire?
Which one am I going to hire?
Yes.
I'm going to hire the one who displays the most. I'm going to hire the one who's going to sit down with me and talk through that process, whether it's Harvard or SPC.
Absolutely. And that's what people do wrong, is that they go for the name brand of something rather than the substance of who's going to, what they're going to provide for you.
However, my devil's advocate thing is, am I going to get taught how to sit down and navigate with a client at Harvard versus SPC? You know what I mean? So
you always have to look at their work.
Right.
And look at what they're selling.
Right. But you know what? Like at the Creative Circus, they taught us that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't. some places don't teach that part of it, right? They teach you how to be a worker, right? And there's a lot of people out here. So these people who are getting these jobs, and I commend anybody who says they can do a thing and in return you something. It may not be up to my standard or not, but if you can make money doing a thing, that's the whole point of all of this, right? It's just the exception is they're leaving people out here with this one thing or this little kit of parts that they don't understand how to use. And a lot of the confusion with small business owners is, what am I supposed to do with any of these things? How do I change my website because someone else set it up for me and then they just let it go to me? Now I have to go back and do all these tutorials to learn how to work my website.
And I'm a business owner. I don't have time to be doing that.
I don't have time for that. And if I am going to take the time, can you please sit down with me and show me how to do it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
At least I would rather pay for another 2 hours of time for you to show me how to do this versus sit there and start from scratch on YouTube and not know how to do it.
And YouTube is, and I love YouTube. YouTube is great if you already know what it is you're doing.
Right.
It's great. It's wonderful. But if you don't know what you're doing and you need something in a hurry, none of the things on YouTube are going to apply to you. They are not. This is not going to happen.
It's just going to add frustration because the biggest thing about finding that type of information is knowing what to look for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Knowing the keywords to search for. And if you don't know how to do research in any industry, you're just left with frustration. You're just still left with more problems that just get compounded with more problems because everything you search turns into another thing that may lead you somewhere else until you understand how to actually look for what you're go after for what you're looking for.
Now, I just want to make sure that people understand I am not knocking YouTube at all.
No,
not one bit.
I'm on YouTube every day for everything.
I love it. I love the platform, and I think it's great. We are evolving as an information society. And now we want it, we can get it, it's at our fingertips.
Right.
But at the same time, knowing what it is that you want, sitting down face to face with somebody who's already in the industry that can provide you that information gives you one leg up in the search time that you're going to spend on YouTube. They can tell you where to go,
right,
and what to search for, rather than you spending that time trying to find it on your own.
Right.
So what it boils down to is cheap is just that.
Cheap is
cheap. It doesn't mean that it's not good.
Right.
It just means that it's cheap, and with that, you get a limited amount of services.
Right. Instructions are not included sometimes.
Absolutely not included.
They're not included. So before in our last couple minutes here, can you give us examples of what to, if someone's taking the cheap route when hiring a photographer, what are things that they can at least look out for? Is there a top 5 checklist of things to look out for while hiring that person?
Well, hiring any type of creative, one of the first things you're going to have to do is you have to be flexible. Be flexible from the beginning, and not be so rigid as to your number. You say, okay, give yourself a range. I'm willing to spend between, let's say, $500 and $1,000, and I'm not going to go above $1,000. And that range is good because you can hire a professional as long as they know your range. But if you are rigid in something, you are going to get just that, just that particular price. That's number one. Number two is to make sure that you look at their portfolio or look at what it is that they have to offer you. And if that quality is there and they're not budgeting on that price, well, that's because it takes a lot in order to get that specific type of quality. It is not an easy factor to just go in and make shots and make it look pretty with you, because you don't know whether or not those photographs are done with actors and or actresses or not. So you got to make sure that you look at that portfolio and see if it works for you. And number three, and this is the most important one of all. If you do hire somebody, cheap or no, communicate with them.
Right.
Talk to them. Tell them about your needs. Tell them about your concerns. Because once that product is delivered, it's going to cost you to do it over.
To correct it.
Yeah, it's going to cost you.
Right. So at that point, should they be looking for someone who will be willing to spend a little time with them in the beginning to at least make sure that they get what they want versus just looking at their portfolio and saying, okay, you're the right person for this shoot? Can it be expected from a photographer's perspective or from a client's perspective to want to spend some time with that photographer in a conversation, at least for them to put them at ease and to just answer preliminary questions walking into this situation?
Well, that goes back to that first part about not being so rigid on price.
Okay.
Give yourself a range.
Okay.
And communicate that range to the said creative. Look, I'm looking to go no higher than this.
Right. So
and then when you do that, you say, and I want this for that.
Right.
I want to be able to talk and communicate. And at that point, the photographer or other creative knows exactly where you're coming from.
Right.
So
okay. Now, is it in the photographer's best interest at that point to educate them just more, not even just on the price of the thing, but like what are they going to get?
Oh, absolutely.
Through that process.
Oh, absolutely. A
You know what I mean?
photographer, any professional should always educate you as to what the final outcome is going to be.
Okay, and that was, I think that's my
Yeah.
biggest point, right?
Yeah.
Is the educational part of it, is that you're not just hiring us to provide a service for you. You're actually hiring us to care about your brand or your company or whatever it is for that moment. For the time that we're working together, you're asking us to really give a damn about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only way to really do that is to spend the time, and then to know that you're getting compensated for it, so that you don't start to resent the people that you're working with.
That's correct.
And that's my biggest point. So sometimes we just have to go cheap.
Yeah, sometimes
Sometimes we gotta go cheap, but you have to expect that if you go cheap, then
just realize the walls are thin
Yeah.
and you can hear
everything.
Oh my goodness.
At 3 o'clock in the
At
morning.
3 o'clock in the morning, everything.
Oh man, I love these conversations because I think they always sound redundant sometimes because they always just seem like they're just obvious conversations, and we should always just have the obvious answers for them. But they just keep coming up because so many people are getting into business, and so many people want to really do this, and they're jumping out here and they're taking classes here, which I think is good.
I think it's great.
Because they're educating themselves. But then when it comes down to these intellectual property things, right? These pieces that can't be held
Correct.
about their business or their brand, they're less educated on those things because those things are less tangible and they're more complicated to understand how to use them properly, what to do with them. So with that being said, Robert Rosick, thanks for having this conversation with me today.
Mr. Bevo, thank you for having the conversation.
Absolutely. Take us out, man.
So I want you guys to know that it's great to be out there starting your own business and such. If you're going to be cheap, understand that there are some things that come with that particular cost. But I will tell you this, and I would say this every week: don't ever be cheap on being unmanageable.
That's
We'll
right.
see you on the next round.
Appreciate it.